Hello, and welcome to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psyche Highway podcast. That's right. Your host and tour guide is Scott Prevett, a healer, hypnotist, and a magician. And your bus driver is Jason Gobelli, also a hypnotist, an entrepreneur, and a spiritual guide. Disclaimer, neither Jason, Scott, or any of our guests here today are licensed professional psychologists or psychiatrists. So please don't make any changes to any medication or treatments that you are currently on based on the conversation that you hear here today. Just hop on the bus and enjoy the ride. Trip with us on the Inner Revelation bus. That's right.
Hi, I'm Jason. Welcome back to the Hypno Travelers on the Magical Psyche Highway. And we are super excited today, aren't we, Scott?
Heck yeah, we got a great guest for you guys.
Oh, yeah, yes, we got the amazing, the wonderful Kris Land. Kris, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jason. And great to be here.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's great to have you, Kris. So, are you ready? Shall we get started?
Let's dig in.
Let's dig in. So, the first question, Kris. Who are you and what do you do?
Oh boy, that's a tough one. Who am I? What do I do? So I'm a computer technologist, serial entrepreneur. 4 years ago, started authoring my own books. Have a general idea of how I think this game of planet Earth operates. My latest book, The Infinity Within, discusses those concepts. And I'm also the father of three wonderful young boys and live in Texas.
Man, it seems like you got a lot going on. And I see in the background there, you got that book up. So that means something that's probably dear to your heart right now. So what is that all about?
So The Infinity Within came from a bunch of work that I put together 40 plus years ago. What happened is I started working with computers and electronics. Well, I started working with electronics when I was 10. I started working with Apple II computers and selling them when I was junior high. One of the people that came in and bought their computer wanted accounting software for farming. It was up in North Dakota. I knew how to code. He knew what he wanted. We did that. We then sold the company for a bunch of money when I was 17, which a couple months later threw me into a deep depression. The deep depression came from the idea of, you know how people talk about destroying their lives when they win the lottery? So I understand at least a viewpoint on that. For me, it was that I lost all the goals. I thought I'd, accomplished everything I was supposed to do. You're supposed to go make money, build a company, sell it, do all these things. And I'd done it all by age 17 and was left with, now what? That started me on the journey of asking questions around why we're here, what our soul is about. And that got me into writing what was originally called The Soul Path or Your Soul Path. And in the beginning of 25 became The Infinity Within when I published it.
Nice, nice. So this is based off of your history. So it's real life thing. So what is your soul path there, Kris?
So that's a longer-winded question. You have to first for me, I have to understand the basis. I think in a very scientific way, and meaning I like to break things down to its simplest form. So what happened for me when I was in my 19s and 20s is I got hired by a bank, and my boss, who was also Kris, in one of our discussions told me he was an atheist. And even though that's fine, I don't have a problem with him telling me that. It didn't sit right for me for him. And I was really curious as to why that was important to him. And I started diving in and I came up with 4 questions that when asked, they don't prove you have a soul, but what they do show is that all the benefit is in believing you have a soul and all the downside is in believing you don't, regardless of whether you do or don't. So from that standpoint, that actually changed his way of looking at life, but it left me with a fundamental question. If we have a soul, what is it? And so from there, I have to go to what I call the 3 stools on the leg. So the first stool was, what is a soul? The second one is growing up. I spent a lot of time as a child growing up studying different theologies, everything I could get my hands on. I loved the idea of what the different theologies represented, how they thought, and the history of mankind through that process. But what I found is even though the semantics were highly different, the end result pretty much was all the same. So from there, I then had the third leg, which is growing up, I also had a lot of things that are considered not normal happen to me growing up. I started with out-of-body experiences at age 6. I had near-death experiences, one that could have just as easily been a full-death experience. And these things shifted and really got my attention that what we're told is real is really not the deal. There's a lot going on that we're told is a certain way, that when you look behind the curtain and see the guy running the equipment, it's totally different. And a perfect example of that is, how many stories have you heard of children seeing ghosts?
Yeah, we hear them all the time.
Okay. What do the parents typically do?
It depends on the parent, I would think.
It does, but there's as with all humankind, we have bell curves. And so the most prominent thing, the most done thing is what?
And they're not real.
Okay. You imagined it. You ate the wrong food. You had a nightmare, right?
Okay.
So we're taught from a very young age that the material world is that we're these little beings or people that are not connected, and ghosts and all this other stuff aren't real. And our parents don't do this to shut us down. They do it because they were taught that in order to calm a child down and make them less scared, we tell them it was imagined. It's not real, right? When really, in a kind of ironic way, it's kind of gaslighting in the sense it was real for the child, right? So what we're taught at a young age is that things that aren't normal aren't real. And what I would argue is the things that aren't normal, the things that are coincidences or called coincidences, I have a saying, which is there is no such things as coinkydinks. And the reason is it's those coincidences, those coinkydinks that really show that we're all connected and that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. So to answer your question, what's my soul path? I think I'm trying not to go down the long way. By answering the question, if we have a soul, what is it? What's it doing here? I created a construct. And in that construct, I call it the game of Earth. And so the game of Earth has playing pieces, which is us or a piece of us, our soul, turns, which I would call our lifetimes, and rules. And when we get to the pearly gates as a soul and look into the game of Earth, we agree to the rules, we place a piece of ourself into the game, and then each lifetime we have a set of things that our soul path that we want to accomplish we've roughly put together. And if we don't do them, we get to do that life over and over and over again. And then once we figure it out, we get to move to the next turn, and eventually leave the game. So what is your soul path? Well, every one of us has our own soul path in each lifetime. And we're here to accomplish certain things in order to move on to the next turn. Mine, what I discovered is I'm relatively new to the game, at least through a bunch of different pathways, which we can spend a lot of time on. And really, I'm here to help provide a mirror and to show people what they're capable of and what they really are in a number of different ways, through companies I've built, through books I've written, and now through the Infinity Within. That's the shortest answer I can come up with.
So you're kind of a leader then, huh?
I've been a leader. In this case, I'm more of I try to be, the book was written not to preach and not to tell you what to believe or make anything like a hard and fast rule. That's not the goal. the goal is to teach through questions and curiosity and to get people to reflect on where they are in respect to the question. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're an
so
enlightener.
There we go.
so now that we're there, so who's behind the curtain when you pull it back there, Kris?
We are.
Okay.
Our actual who we actually are is behind the curtain. What we've agreed to forget is what we actually are. So let me talk about the 4 rules, just because that'll give you some touchstones. So first I said, what is a soul? Well, the Bible, which is arguably the most read book on the planet, says it pretty clearly. We're the children of God. Jesus told his disciples, you will do everything I've been doing and much more. There's tons of references in the New Testament, less so, in the Old Testament, all over, where it talks about we are basically either pieces of God or godlike entities, right? Great. What is a godlike entity? What would they find interesting in a 4th dimensional construct, what I call the game of Earth? And I could only come up with one thing. Experience emotion. And when I say that, I don't mean just the happy emotions. I mean all of it. Because that would actually be, I think, for something that's a omnipotent being that exists outside of space and time, that might actually find interesting. It might be something to be fun to go do, right? Well, then the rules come in. So the first rule is we agree to leave all of our godlike abilities outside. Now, why would we do that? Well, if the 3 of us sat down for a game of Monopoly and I grabbed all the money and all the properties, you probably wouldn't play with me again. Wouldn't be a lot of fun, right?
Okay.
So when we agree to put all of our godlike abilities, that's basically saying we're going to play Monopoly and we're going to play by the rules. That kind of does the goal of experiencing emotion. However, here's where it breaks. My favorite dog runs across the street, gets run over. I draw on my power, I change the outcome, and off we go. So what happens is I can experience things in a 4th dimensional construct, but if I can draw on what I am all the time, I'm really going to dilute, meaning anytime something happens I don't like, I just change it, right? So in comes rule number 2. Rule number 2 is we forget that we have them. Now that works for solving the problem of experiencing, but it also creates a new problem called an infinite time loop trap, which means if we only had those 2 rules, we would leave a piece of us in this game forever. And we're being souls, I'm guessing we're pretty smart and won't do that. So in comes rule number 3, which is what we briefly talked about, which is turns. And so before we even enter into this construct, we kind of set roughly together what we want to do in each turn, each lifetime, what we want to accomplish before we're allowed to move on and eventually win or / leave the game. And the 4th rule is that we're going to be 100% invested when we're in here. The way Elias in The Infinity Within, Elias is the mentor for Gabriel, or he goes by Gabe. And Gabe says, well, if it's just a game, why do I need to consider it very serious? It's not designed that way. Rule 4 is that you're going to be 100% invested in this game. It's a game with teeth, as Elias calls it. And then there's 4 more rules that I won't get into, but the general idea is that we're in here to experience emotion and flow through life turns and accomplish whatever it is that we want to accomplish. And if we don't, we get to do it over and over again. And now I'm going to segue into, have you guys ever played tic-tac-toe?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you play it now?
No.
Why not?
Boring. So let me ask you, what you're saying though, Kris, is that we're all gods playing a game.
We're all gods in the game of Earth, learning and experiencing emotion through the process of being in a 4th dimensional construct, meaning time is the primary motivator.
So what if we don't want to play?
Well, you've already agreed. So now you have some turns to accomplish. before you get your piece out.
Kind of like Jumanji.
Kind of like. However, it's kind of interesting also is that I would bet that we drop cheat codes in. And to the extent that we see them, that we pay attention to them, we get to cheat and move along a little faster. But the game is designed. So back to the tic-tac-toe question, you answered it. It's boring, right? Well, if now let's take that concept as a human being and move it up to a soul. Do you think a soul is going to pick tic-tac-toe to play? Or do you think the soul is going to pick chess or Go to go play?
Well, maybe it might already know who it already is and doesn't need to play anything.
So the answer is yes, but rule 2 says you've agreed to forget that.
It's almost like the Q character John Delancey played on Star Trek, except he liked to cheat. He inserted himself
cheated
into
a
the
lot.
situation.
So
But
Kris, when
he
did you
cheated.
have this? When did you have this aha moment?
So
Well, okay, I got this. What's that all about?
So through that depression of asking questions, through my background of experiencing some pretty wild things, through my background of studying theologies, it became almost like a download. It was like I'd be sitting having some coffee, and then all of a sudden rule 1 and 2 would drop into my mind. I went, oh, that kind of makes sense. And then kind of going through the questions. What is a soul? What is it here for? What does a game look like? You know, in the game question, it turns out a game really only has 3 parts. You have playing pieces, turns, and rules. With those 3 things, you have a game. So what I kept doing is getting these downloads and then breaking it down into the simplest pieces I could find that made sense and resonated.
So, Kris, so we got all this, and you got all this that you've created and you've worked on with the infinity within. So, of course, all wisdom's plagiarized. So, who are your mentors?
You
Who are
know,
the people that you've drawn from that helped take you who you are today, made you who you are today?
so I've read a ton of books in the sci-fi fantasy space. I would say that none of them really touched on these constructs much, except maybe in very abstract ways. Like the Soul Rider series, I remember, that was more of a cross between science and magic, which was a really interesting series. The Thomas Covenant series, which was fun, known as the White Gold Wielder. Of course, The Hobbit, and different, many. I mean, we were talking probably over 3,000 books in those genres. As far as the New Age learning books, I've read The New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which I found to be very interesting. I've read a lot of theologies, I mean, we're talking Sanskrit, Egyptian, Catholicism, Gnostic, Buddhism. I mean, you can go. I mean, the book I list a lot of these different people and religions and how they look at the world. So I'm sure that had a lot to do with kind of the download and kind of the subconscious building the constructs. But as far as mentors go, my mentors, I've only had a few, and they're all in the business space. I worked with Jobs at Apple and at Next. Fascinating person, very focused, not necessarily a nice person all the time. I've worked with Nolan Bushnell. He and I actually took a company together, took a company public together with another gentleman, John Belden. John took a role of being my mentor for a number of years when they acquired my company. So I've got a lot of technology space mentors, but in the spiritual sense, I kind of just came across all this.
Scott, you got any questions here you want to throw out? I've been taking them all.
Sure. So, Kris, what's your passion? What do you focus on right now?
Oh, that's another complex question. So I do construction and real estate stuff. I typically build out 1 day a week to do that. My family lives in a 1902 Victorian, so I do work on that. I write my books. I'm currently in the second, I'm just starting the third draft of the second book of the Infinity Within trilogy. Um, I have another construction book, book 6, done. I'm just working on illustrations. And then from the technology space, we briefly touched on it. I work with a lot of the new, what I would call bleeding edge AI tech. And I've started working with OpenAI very soon after they started and became available. And I've been working with them and on their stuff since. And then the latest thing to come out in the industry we briefly discussed, which is the OpenClaw stuff, which is where you get to train a AI model to use the large language model, the LLM, like ChatGPT as its brain, and go out and do things for you 24/7. So I'm building an investment model and a group of investment AI agents to go analyze the marketplace and do investments. I'm building another one that we briefly discussed based on health and health feedback loops and supplements and both proven supplement technology as well as leading edge and or bleeding edge, and then digging up as much as I can and having the AI go dig and figure out what is the best thing next for me to look at doing. So there's a whole breadth of things that I work on. And then I love to play with my boys and do that kind of stuff. So a bunch.
Awesome.
Nice. Nice. So speaking of playing with the boys and everything, how's things going with the family, man? How do they accept all the infinity within and everything that you got going on? What are they involved with you? Are they following dad? What's happening?
So the boys think it's fun and interesting, and they like to see me on YouTube because they love the idea of YouTube influencers. And two of my boys really are trying to figure out how to become a YouTube influencer in the like kids gaming arena, like Minecraft and what's the other big one? Roblox, and they record themselves playing these certain games that everybody likes and blah blah blah. It was my wife that actually got me to finish the book. As I mentioned, I wrote it 40 plus years ago, and when I put it together at age 19 and 20, I was not a writer, so I hired a ghostwriter. The ghostwriter kept wanting to change it into her own book, so I fired the ghostwriter and put all my notes in a filing cabinet. And even though I've been operating from the standpoint of what it represents, it was not a book. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I started being an author. I wrote my first book, How to Build a Dream Home. It received really phenomenal success, and it got me confident in my writing skills. And then my wife, she had a challenging childhood. And so she would always ask me questions about how I looked at life and how I could keep positive and different things. And so I shared eventually all of the concepts from the book with her. And in the beginning of 25, she says, you need to finish and get this book out to people to help them. So she was kind of the crux or the impetus to say, go pull those files out of your filing cabinet and go finish the book.
Nice, nice. So you probably got some people waiting for part 2 and part 3, I imagine.
I think so. It's been receiving, it won a number of up to now 10 different awards, including the Eric Hoffer Da Vinci Eye Award. And Eric Hoffer is, keep in mind, I'm a technologist. So these names, I can only tell you just by reading and looking them up. I didn't know who these people were. But Eric Hoffer, the Eric Hoffer Awards, I think have been around since 1922. The other one that I received a very strong review on is called Kirkus Reviews, which I believe has been doing this since the 30s, and then a number of newer ones. So it's been getting a lot of really positive feedback in helping people. My favorite review has been where somebody said, it's like sitting with my best friend and talking about life. And
nice.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it's been getting all 4 and 5-star reviews, which I've been very happy with. My narrator is a award-winning narrator. I was very fortunate to get him. There's a very funny ego stroking story if you want to hear it around that. You do?
Sure.
All right. I don't usually try to toot my own horn much, but this one really was fun. The guy that ended up narrating my book, his name is Eduardo Bellini, and he's a actor and I believe a screenwriter, and he's read or narrated over 750 books, I believe. More importantly, he's done the books for Eckhart Tolle, or at least a book for Eckhart Tolle, The Untethered Soul, Dean Koontz, the Dalai Lama. So pretty seasoned guy in this niche, right? And I found him. I said, this is the guy. This is the voice I want for my book. And so I got a hold of him. And it was funny because within the first 5 or 10 minutes, he says, all right, well, I just want you to know I'm going to be expensive. And I said, yeah, I get that. I understand. And we'll make that work. And the second thing he said was, I'm really busy. I might not be able to get to this until the end of this year, or maybe next year. I said, you know what? For your voice and how you're going to tell the story, I'll wait. I'm okay with that. So in Audible, when you hire a narrator, what they do is they have to do a 15-minute test that they send you in order to officiate the contract.
Right.
So he did the 15 minutes. He sent it to me. And the next day he gets hold of me. He says, yeah, Kris, I'm not putting your book down. I've postponed my other contracts.
Nice.
And I'll have it finished this week.
Nice.
Wow.
So that was a huge boost to, okay, here's a guy that's done Eckhart Tolle's work and the Dalai Lama and Untethered Soul and all these other books. And he didn't want to put my book down and he wanted to finish it. So that was huge. But also saying, if you listen to the Audible version, he's done, once again, a phenomenal job. It's really fun to listen to.
Nice.
Yeah.
So your big book, you've done quite a bit with the Dream Home book too, though, correct?
In my technology space of being an entrepreneur in the technology area, the pro of that is it's a lot of fun. It moves very fast, but the con is that you're always fixing bugs or fixing stuff. It never is finished. Ever. Where if you build furniture or a home, there's an ending point. So my hobby became construction and building houses, whereas my work was the technology space.
So where does the crossover from technology, building, and the infinity within, how does it all come together?
Well, so the technology is what I love. I love building things that haven't existed in the technology space and building things that can be highly useful in today's world. So I have always had an interest in technology since being a computer geek and working with electronics at a very young age. The infinity within came from that depression of selling my first company and not knowing what to do next. And the construction came from, I needed something to calm my brain down from the technology work and use my hands with, and like bang with a hammer and drill stuff. And so what ended up happening is, from my company background and running technology companies, which when you run technology companies, you need to have things like policies and procedures. Otherwise, everything goes to hell in a handbasket pretty quick. So I was really good at understanding how to take a company construct and build policies and procedures around it in order to make it even more profitable. And so I did that when I was building houses. I came up with a spreadsheet of, from like the time I buy a piece of property to the time I move in, all the steps I'd already put in a spreadsheet. Well, it was an easy book for me to write, right? Because I already had the outline done.
Got it.
So
So how do they blend together though? How do they mesh? Because they're all part of you. So how does it all blend together?
So I'll mention the third book, Niche, and then I'll answer your question. I also have a book called The Finance Book for Young Adults. And I wrote it because I wish I'd had it when I was in my teens, because they don't teach a lot of this stuff in schools. So I wrote that book. Now, what's the common thread across all three niches? The answer is in my dedication. And that is, I want to give people knowledge and freedom with knowledge to go do these things. I don't want them to get taken advantage of and hire a general contractor that basically doesn't tell them the truth or takes money away because they're not knowledgeable about what they're doing in building a house. The same with money and the same with spiritual. I want to give people knowledge, i.e. power, to go start believing in themselves and create their own life and their own life path.
Well, how do our viewers get a hold of you?
That one's easy. I've been very blessed. If you type in Kris, Krisland, or the Infinity Within Infinity Within in Google, I take over the first 3 or 4 pages. Actually, in any search engine. If you go to krisland.com, you'll find my website, and then you can find my book, The Infinity Within, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart of all places, bookstores all over the world, Apple, pretty much everywhere.
Nice. Nice. Scott, any other questions?
Kris, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and sharing it with us. We really appreciate it.
Likewise, I really appreciate the time and the awesome questions. Thank you.
Kris, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah. One thing I like to close with for the listeners is the concept of how fear can be treated not as a stopping place or as a place of freezing, but maybe looked at as a signpost. So an example of that would be if I'm, say, fearful about asking for a raise at my job, and I want to ask for a raise. I've been at the company for 5 years, but I'm afraid to ask. If I stop there, I'm frozen, and I'll probably develop resentment as time moves forward. But if I get curious about it and I ask questions like, where is this fear coming from? How is it serving me today? And how does it serve me going forward from today? I can shift fear from a blocker to a choice. And once I take fear and make it a choice, I've taken my power back. So for anybody that gets fear, and we all do, take a step back, ask those 3 questions, and change it from a blocker to a choice in life.
Nice. Nice. Well, it's been wonderful, Kris. I got one more question for you.
Dive in.
The big question. What are your words of wisdoms that you want to leave our viewers with?
Well, I just gave you one big piece.
The big one you want to leave our viewers with, your words of wisdom.
Well, the fear one is one of the biggest. I guess it's to start questioning whether or not the things that are considered coincidences, the things that are considered not normal, maybe those are the cheat codes to remember who each of us are. And when we start paying more attention to the little miracles every day in life that happen around us, we start being able to clear the fear, remove doubt a little chunk at a time, and start remember what we really are, which I would argue that we are all connected beings, and that this conversation we're having right now is not a coincidence. It's because we already connected, we already made the decision to be here, and here we are. And paying attention to these little miracles starts opening us up more to what's going on. Instead of being fearful of what's happening to us, we get to start taking control.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kris. Thank you for that. Thank you for the whole interview. We certainly appreciate having you there.
Thank you.
Here. And
if you want to do it again, let me know.
You got it. And for our viewers out there, we're glad that you're here too. If you like us, subscribe, follow us, give us a like. If you think we're assholes, we don't care. Just give us a thumbs down. We're glad you're here. We hope to see you next week. So please come back and we'll see you next week. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Wow, what a trip. Thanks for taking that journey with us today. Please like us, share us, and enlighten us with your views of the topics we drove into today. We appreciate you and love reading your comments. Thanks again, and we hope to see you back on the bus next week. That's right.